Gandalf's origins and departure to Middle-earth. Gandalf was originally known as Olorin, one of the Maiar, lesser divine spirits who served the Valar, the great powers of the world. He lived in Aemon, across the sea from Middle-earth, during the First and Second Ages. When Sauron's power began to rise again in the Third Age, the Valar decided to send several Maiar to Middle-earth as guides and helpers for its peoples. These emissaries were called the Istari, or wizards. When Olorin was chosen, he hesitated because he admitted that he feared Sauron's power. Manwë, the chief of the Valar, insisted that this was precisely why he must go. Those who fear evil are often best suited to oppose it. In the year 1000 of the Third Age, Olorin departed from Valinor. He sailed across the sea and arrived at the Grey Havens, a coastal settlement in Middle-earth. There, he was welcomed by Círdan the shipwright, who recognized his wisdom. Círdan entrusted him with Narya, the Ring of Fire, one of the 3 elven rings of power. He predicted that Gandalf would face many struggles with evil, and that the ring would strengthen him in that work. Unlike Saruman, the leader of the Istari, or the 2 blue wizards, Gandalf kept his travels mostly within the western lands of Middle-earth, where elves, dwarves, and the remnants of the Dúnedain lived. The elves gave him the name Mithrandir, meaning the Grey Pilgrim. The dwarves called him Tharkun, meaning Man of the Staff. Among men in the north, he became known by the name that endured, Gandalf. The rise of evil in Mirkwood and the White Council. Around the year 1100 of the Third Age, Gandalf and the elves discovered that a dark power had taken root in southern Mirkwood at a fortress called Dol Guldur. Strange shadows moved through the forest, evil creatures multiplied, and whispers spread that a Nazgul or some new evil being was behind it. Gandalf feared that it might even be Sauron himself returning in secret. Over the next 2 centuries, Middle-earth saw many threats. Orcs multiplied in the Misty Mountains. The Witch King of Angmar built a stronghold in the north and attacked the Dúnedain kingdom of Arnor. Ancient realms like Moria and Minas Ithil fell under darkness. Wars, plagues, and disasters spread across the lands. Finally, in the year 2063, Gandalf went alone into Dol Guldur to uncover the truth. The dark figure who ruled there, known as the Necromancer, fled before Gandalf could discover his identity. This gave Middle-earth a brief respite, but the threat was far from gone. To confront these dangers, the White Council was formed in 2066. It included the most powerful leaders of elves and wizards, Galadriel, Elrond, Saruman, and Gandalf. Galadriel wanted Gandalf to lead the council, recognizing his wisdom, but he refused. Gandalf valued his independence and did not want to be bound by leadership duties. Saruman was chosen instead. As Gandalf continued his wanderings, he grew especially fond of the hobbits. During the harsh winter of 2758, known as the Long Winter, Gandalf came to the Shire to help them survive. Their endurance, kindness, and hidden courage impressed him deeply, and from then on, he kept a close watch on their small land. Gandalf's discoveries at Dol Guldur and the Dwarves' Quest. In 2845, the Dwarven king Thrain II disappeared while journeying east toward Erebor. Gandalf began searching for him, which led him into many dangerous places, including the dark halls of Khazad-dûm. Eventually, in 2850, Gandalf secretly entered Dol Guldur once more. There he found Thran imprisoned and near death. Thran entrusted Gandalf with the last of his possessions, a map and a key to Erebor, the Lonely Mountain. In Dol Guldur's dungeons, Gandalf also confirmed his worst fear. The Necromancer was in fact Sauron, regaining strength while still searching for the One Ring. Gandalf escaped with this knowledge and reported back to the White Council. He urged them to act immediately and strike Dol Guldur before Sauron became too powerful. Saruman, however, argued against action, insisting that the One Ring had been lost forever in the sea. Unknown to the rest, Saruman was already secretly searching for the ring himself. Meanwhile, Gandalf often returned to the Shire. He became a familiar figure at the parties of the Old Took and entertained hobbits with stories and fireworks. During these visits, he also met a younger Bilbo Baggins, who struck him as more adventurous than most of his kin. By the year 2941, Gandalf had grown deeply concerned about the situation in the north. Smaug the dragon had destroyed Dale and seized Erebor more than a century earlier. If Sauron were to ally with Smaug, it would give him a devastating stronghold in the north, leaving Middle-earth threatened on all sides. While staying at Bree, Gandalf happened to meet Thorin Oakenshield, heir to Erebor. Both were thinking about the dragon, and together they discussed a plan to reclaim the Lonely Mountain. Gandalf believed that a stealthy approach would be better than open war, and he decided a burglar would be needed. He remembered Bilbo Baggins, the peculiar hobbit from the Shire. Soon after, Gandalf brought Thorin and his company of dwarves to Bag End, where he pushed Bilbo into joining their quest. Gandalf then guided the company on their journey, saving them from trolls in the Trollshaws, leading them through Rivendell, and rescuing them from goblins in the Misty Mountains. Along the way, he gained the sword Glamdring. When the company was later hosted by Beorn, Gandalf parted from them to attend a meeting of the White Council. There he finally persuaded Saruman and the others to attack Dol Guldur. The necromancer fled to Mordor, strengthening Gandalf's fears about the looming war. Afterward, Gandalf rejoined Thorin's company near Erebor. By then, Smaug had been slain by Bard of Dale, but new dangers arose. Tensions between dwarves, elves, and men nearly led to battle, but Gandalf intervened. He warned of an oncoming invasion of orcs and wargs. The Battle of the Five Armies followed, where the Free Peoples joined forces to defeat the enemy. When the war was done, Gandalf and Bilbo returned west together, passing through Rivendell and the Trollshaws, before finally parting on the edge of the Shire. Gandalf's mission in the north had succeeded. Smaug was gone. The orcs were weakened, and Sauron's northern threats were diminished. Sauron's return and Gandalf's watch over the Shire. 10 years after being driven from Dol Guldur, in the year 2951, Sauron openly revealed himself in Mordor and began rebuilding the fortress of Barad-dûr. This marked the beginning of his open war against the Free Peoples. In response, the White Council met for the last time in 2953. Gandalf once again voiced concerns about Sauron's growing power, but Saruman silenced him by claiming to know that the One Ring had been lost forever in the sea. In truth, Saruman's jealousy and hidden ambition had twisted him. He had spies watching Gandalf's movements and had begun to covet the ring for himself. During this period, Gandalf deepened his bond with the hobbits. He noticed their unusual resilience and the peace of their land, and he began to suspect that their innocence might one day play a crucial role. He visited the Shire frequently, and his interest in it only grew after he observed Bilbo Baggins' behavior. Bilbo, who had returned from the quest of Erebor with a strange magic ring, seemed to age much slower than normal hobbits. His obsession with the ring and his odd behavior unsettled Gandalf, and though he did not yet know the truth, suspicion began to weigh on him. In 2956, Gandalf met Aragorn, the hidden heir of Isildur. Recognizing his strength and wisdom, Gandalf formed a close friendship and alliance with him. From then on, the two worked together against Sauron, often coordinating their efforts across Middle-earth. Gandalf also spent time in Gondor, where he taught Faramir and was mistrusted by Denethor, the steward. By 3001, Bilbo planned a farewell birthday party. Gandalf encouraged him to leave the ring behind for Frodo, though Bilbo resisted. After some struggle, Bilbo finally departed the Shire, leaving the ring in Frodo's care. Gandalf grew more certain that this was no ordinary trinket. He began to suspect that it might be one of the lost rings of power. To be sure, he left the Shire in search of answers. Over the next years, Gandalf and Aragorn hunted tirelessly for Gollum, the creature who had once possessed the ring. Their search stretched across the Anduin Vale, Mirkwood, Rovanion, and even near Mordor itself, but for years they failed to capture him. Finally, in 3017, Aragorn succeeded in bringing Gollum to Thranduil's halls in Mirkwood. Gandalf interrogated him and learned the most disturbing truth. Sauron had already captured Gollum before, and in that time had learned two dangerous words, Shire and Baggins. The Dark Lord now knew where to search. This discovery confirmed Gandalf's fears. Frodo's ring was the One Ring of Sauron. Gandalf rushed back to the Shire, knowing that the enemy's servants would not be far behind. Gandalf's capture, escape, and the road to Rivendell. In 3018, Gandalf returned to the Shire and urged Frodo to prepare to leave with the ring. He promised to come back before Frodo's and Bilbo's shared birthday on September the 22nd to guide him. But before Gandalf could return, he received a summons from Saruman through Radagast the Brown. The message warned that the Ringwraiths were already searching for the Shire and that Saruman needed to see him at once. Trusting the message, Gandalf traveled to Isengard in July. There, Saruman revealed his betrayal. He demanded that Gandalf join him in seeking the ring for themselves, to use its power against Sauron. Gandalf refused, and Saruman imprisoned him on the pinnacle of Orthanc. For over 2 months, Gandalf was trapped until the great eagle Gwaihir rescued him on September 18th. Gwaihir carried him south to Rohan, where Gandalf secured Shadowfax, the Lord of Horses, as his mount. Riding Shadowfax, Gandalf rushed north. He crossed the rivers Ison and Greyflood, then reached Sarn Ford on September 28th. By then, the Black Riders had already entered the Shire. Gandalf followed their trail but arrived too late. Frodo and his companions had already left Hobbiton under Aragorn's guidance. Gandalf pressed on and arrived at Weathertop on October 3rd. There, he was attacked by several Ringwraiths. He fought them through the night, drawing on fire and his power to drive them off. By dawn on October 4th, he escaped but had to flee north with 4 Nazgul pursuing him. He finally reached Rivendell on October 18th, only days before Frodo himself arrived after surviving a Morgul wound. 3 days later, the Council of Elrond was held. Gandalf sat with Elrond, Aragorn, Boromir, Legolas, Gimli, and Frodo to decide the fate of the ring. It was resolved that the ring must be destroyed in the fires of Mount Doom. Thus, the Fellowship of the Ring was formed, and Gandalf took his place as its leader. On December 25th, 3018, the Fellowship departed Rivendell and began their journey south. They attempted to cross the Misty Mountains through the Pass of Caradhras, but were forced back by blizzards. Gandalf then led them toward Moria, the ancient dwarven halls, despite his unease about entering. Moria, the Balrog, and Gandalf the White. On January 13th, 3019, the Fellowship reached the western gate of Moria. Gandalf alone knew the ancient Elvish needed to open the doors of Durin. Inside they crossed vast halls and dark tunnels until they discovered Balin's tomb in the chamber of Mazarbul. There, they were attacked by orcs and confronted by a far older terror, the Balrog of Morgoth, a fire demon from the First Age. As the Fellowship fled toward the eastern exit, Gandalf turned to face the Balrog on the bridge of Khazad-dûm. There, he broke the bridge with his staff, sending the Balrog into the abyss. But the demon's whip caught Gandalf, pulling him down into the depths as well. The Fellowship escaped into Dimril Dale, believing their guide and leader had fallen. For 8 days, Gandalf and the Balrog battled through the deep places of the world, from the roots of stone up to the high peak of Zirak-Zigil. At last, on January 23rd, Gandalf cast down his foe in the Battle of the Peak, but the effort killed him. His spirit left time and memory, passing into realms beyond thought. After 3 weeks, Gandalf was sent back to Middle-earth, returned to life by the will of the One. No longer Gandalf the Grey, he was clothed in white, his power renewed, and his authority raised. On February 17th, Gwaihir found him lying weak upon the mountains and bore him to Lothlorien. There, Galadriel and the elves healed him, gave him white robes and a new staff. By March 1st, Gandalf rode to Fangorn Forest, where he reunited with Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. They marveled to see him alive, and he revealed himself as Gandalf the White. Summoning Shadowfax, he led them to Edoras, the hall of King Theoden of Rohan. There he cast out the influence of Grima Wormtongue, Saruman's agent, and restored Theoden's strength. The War of the Ring, Rohan, and Gondor. After freeing King Theoden from Saruman's influence, Gandalf urged Rohan to prepare for war. When Saruman's armies marched, Gandalf rode in search of Erkenbrand and the forces of the Westfold. He gathered 1,000 riders and returned with them at dawn on March 4th, turning the tide in the Battle of Helm's Deep. The victory gave Rohan renewed strength and broke Saruman's military power. Soon after, Gandalf and Theoden rode to Isengard, where Saruman remained in Orthanc. Gandalf offered him a chance at repentance, but Saruman refused. In response, Gandalf broke Saruman's staff and cast him from the Order of Wizards and from the White Council. Grima Wormtongue, in spite, threw down the Palantir of Orthanc, which Pippin later looked into, revealing himself to Sauron. Realizing danger would come swiftly, Gandalf took Pippin and rode in haste to Minas Tirith. On March 9th, they arrived in Gondor's capital. Gandalf counseled Denethor, the steward of Gondor, but found him proud and suspicious. When Faramir returned from Osgiliath, Gandalf helped drive back the Nazgul who assailed him. From Faramir, Gandalf learned that Frodo and Sam were still alive, carrying the ring toward Mordor. On March 14th, the siege of Minas Tirith began. Sauron's armies encircled the city, and on the morning of March 15th, the Witch King of Angmar broke the gate. Gandalf confronted him at the entrance, prepared to fight, but the horns of Rohan announced the arrival of Theoden's riders, forcing the battle elsewhere. The Witch King was later slain by Éowyn and Merry, and with the arrival of Aragorn's reinforcements, the Battle of the Pelennor Fields ended in Gondor's victory. Afterward, Gandalf was chosen by Aragorn, Imrahil, and Éomer to lead the host of the West. His plan was to march directly to the Black Gate of Mordor, not to win by strength, but to distract Sauron and give Frodo a chance to complete his mission. On March 25th, they reached the Morannon and confronted the mouth of Sauron. Soon after, the armies of Mordor attacked in the Battle of the Black Gate. As the battle raged, Frodo and Sam reached Mount Doom and the ring was destroyed. Sauron's power collapsed, his armies scattered, and the war ended. Gandalf, born by Gwaihir, flew to Mount Doom and rescued Frodo and Sam from the fire, bringing them to safety on the field of Cormallen. The Return of the King and Gandalf's Final Journeys. After Sauron's downfall, Gandalf turned to the work of restoring peace. On May 1st, 3019, he placed the crown upon Aragorn's head in Minas Tirith, crowning him King Elessar of the reunited kingdom of Arnor and Gondor. Later that summer, Gandalf accompanied Aragorn to the mountain of Mindalluin, where they discovered a young white tree sapling. This new tree, descended from Nimloth, was planted in Minas Tirith to replace the old dead tree, symbolizing renewal for the realm. In late July, Gandalf traveled north as part of the funeral escort for King Theoden of Rohan. Theoden was laid to rest in Edoras on August 10th, and the Fellowship of Companions slowly began to part ways afterward. Passing through Helm's Deep and Isengard, Gandalf witnessed that Treebeard had allowed Saruman and Grima Wormtongue to leave Orthanc. On the road north, the group encountered Saruman again, now a powerless wanderer. Gandalf did not act against him, allowing him to meet his fate in the Shire. By September, Gandalf and the hobbits returned to Rivendell, reuniting briefly with Bilbo. They then set out for the Shire in early October. Near Bree, Gandalf parted from Frodo, Sam, Merry, and Pippin, telling them he would not intervene in their final troubles at home. Instead, he visited Tom Bombadil, remaining in the region while the hobbits reclaimed their land from Saruman's men. For the next 2 years, Gandalf's activities are little recorded. It is said he may have stayed with Bombadil, speaking of matters beyond the concerns of elves and men. At last, on September 29, 3021, Gandalf came to the Grey Havens. There he boarded a white ship alongside Frodo, Bilbo, Elrond, Galadriel, and others of the Ring-Bearers. With him also went Shadowfax, his loyal horse. This was Gandalf's final journey, the end of his long travels in Middle-earth. He sailed into the west, returning to Ammon, no longer Gandalf the Grey or the White, but once more Olorin, a Maya of the Blessed Realm.